You all know this meeting is being held on a steamer, and Keshav Chandra Sen and other Brahmo devotees are there. So naturally, the Brahmos were not very familiar with the Kali doctrine, or even if they were familiar, they did not accept it. And many of them thought it was a positive evil to worship somebody who appears to be ferocious, which involves killing. So they used to feel that by worshipping Kali, people would become tamasic. So that was the idea which most of the Brahmos, the modern so called modern educated Brahmos, believed. In fact, there is a historical uh, event also connected with this. When Sister Nivedita spoke on Kali the Mother, you know that she was very close with Rabindranath Tagore and the other Brahmo leaders as well, because she was a patriot, she was very active in many fields, including literature, and also was supportive of Jagdish Chandra Basu or Jagdish Chandra Bose, who was not only a scientist but also was a practicing Brahmo, member of the Brahmo Samaj. So it seems Jagdish Chandra Bose once asked Nivedita or requested Nivedita, see, we accept everything that you do, except your Kali worship. You are fed for this Mother Kali, which you are preaching. If you just give it up, or if you just then everything you do is acceptable for us, except this Mother worship or this Kali worship, in especially. First of all, they did not believe in idol worship, but even among the idols, they felt that Kali worship leads to increase in tamasic nature. Now, that was their idea, which they shared with their followers. And Sri Krishna perhaps was aware of this fact that these people, though they secretly appreciate, in fact, Keshav Chandra Sen himself, Sri Krishna once or twice mentioned that he secretly worshipped Kali because that old samskaras of being born in Bengal, which has traditionally been a place where Shakti, especially Ma Kali, is worshipped. It was impossible for these so-called Brahmos or the modern educated Brahmos to give up Kali altogether, though their religion or the founders of their religion prohibited Kali worship. So this is very significant. The background one should understand when Sri Krishna is trying to explain the harmony of Veda and the Tantra. Vedas they accepted. The Brahmos accepted the Upanishadic portion of the Vedas where formless God is discussed. So that was not a big problem for them. But how to reconcile it with Shakti, the idea of Shakti, which they felt was not necessary. They wanted to just stick to the formless God without idols. So the moment you bring in Shakti, then you bring in the idols, the murtis, the Makali, Durga, and all. So this chapter 4 begins with a shloka from the Mahanirvana Tantra 4:15. Tvameva sukshma, tvam sthula, vyakta swarupini, nirakarapi sakara, kastvam veditum arhati. You are both the subtle sukshma and sthula. You are both sukshma and sthula. You are the subtle and you are the gross. You, O mother, are manifest as well as unmanifest. You are vyakta in a way. You are the creation, you are Prakriti. But you are also uncreated. The Moola Prakriti, or as I said, the Parama Prakriti. Prakriti has two aspects. The Parama Prakriti, which is one with the Purusha, as I told you many times in the Sankhya, that they believe that. And the Prakriti which we see, the creation, is the lower form or para and apara prakriti. Apara prakriti or the lower prakriti which we see as creation. And tantras accept both. They know that the created prakriti is a lower form of prakriti, but we have to accept that And once we get the grace of the lower Prakriti, we can attain to the higher Prakriti and finally become one with the Purusha. So that is what Sankhya believes, or the Tantra also believes. So harmony of Veda and Tantra, the glory of the primordial power, the feminine power or Shakti is described. And Nirakarapi Sakara, Kastam Veditum Arati, who has the capacity to know you, O mother? So that is the refrain of all the songs which we hear, from Ram Prasad to Kamala Kanta and so many people. They, when they try to describe Mother Kali, they were not very sure what is the actual nature of Mother Kali. Though Kali has been, if you see the image of Mother Kali, there are certain things which strike you. But unless you understand the deep significance of what Kali represents, what this symbol represents, what this idol represents, then it is difficult, unless we do that, it's difficult to understand the true import of Ma Kali. So Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain how there is harmony between Vedas and Tantras, and how what is the glory of the primordial power. So now the steamer is on the way to Calcutta. Those who are having darshan of Sri Ramakrishna and listening to his nectar-like words in the cabin are not even conscious of the moment of the steamer. That's what M is feeling. I'm not sure whether other Brahmos were also feeling that, because I don't know whether they were equally concentrated, but at least M was feeling that. So he says, does a bee buzz when it rests on a flower? So Sri Ramakrishna's attraction was so much that even worldly people would be attracted as a bee is attracted by the flower. So naturally, even the most worldly people would have been, that is what M thinks, and it may be possible also that for that moment, Sri Ramakrishna was attracting the whole attention of the whole crowd on the boat, whether they believed in Kali or not. Now, Dakshineshwar with its beautiful Kali temple has slowly vanished from sight, because they had come there and in a small boat, Sri Ramakrishna was taken to this big steamer, and they were supposed to travel to Kolkata. As the steamer plows through the holy waters of the Ganges that reflect the blue firmament above, the waves are broken into crests of foam, making a rushing sound. But the murmurs of the waves are now lost on the ears of the devotees. Spellbound, they gaze at the smiling, joyful, sweet face and loving eyes of this wonderful yogi. They see him in an all renouncing and loving, they see in him an all renouncing and loving Vairagi, intoxicated with love for God and knowing nothing other than God. In the meantime, Sri Ramakrishna talks to them. Now, this is what M felt very strongly, that here is a yogi, joyful, sweet, with a sweet face and a loving eyes, and is at the same time, he is all renouncing, but at the same time not a dry Vairagi. Sri Ramakrishna had prayed to the mother because he saw a Vairagi eating food with the dog. He said, don't make me a dry Vairagi like this person. Vairagis can be very dry people, but here he was joyful. He wanted to enjoy the divine Leela of the mother. At the same time, he had a very strong Vedantic background, Upanishadic background. His renunciation was firm, but at the same time, he enjoyed the sport of the Divine Mother as a joyful child. So in the meantime, Sri Ramakrishna is now starting the conversation. He says, because he knew that Brahmos are the followers of mostly non-dual Vedanta, something which comes very close to Advaita Vedanta. The followers of non-dualistic Vedanta say that creation, preservation, dissolution, living beings and the world are all playful manifestations of Shakti, the divine power. I mean, he says though they attribute it to Maya, and ultimately in some schools they say it is pure Maya, it doesn't really exist. But those who accept the world in Vedanta there are many schools. Some of them accept that it's a divine sport. It's a divine sport which is in fact blocking the vision of the Purusha or the Brahman. So, but still, they are playful manifestation of Shakti, the divine power. If you reason it out, you'll find that they are all illusory, like dreams. Now, that is the premise of Vedanta, pure Vedanta. They say that in a dream, the dream world, you have an awareness of different objects. You have so many things, and in the dream, you feel that they are so real, and you feel the presence of so many objects which at that time do not appear to be illusory. They appear to be very real. You have a dream body, you have a dream eyes, you see all the objects as you see the objects in a waking state. And suddenly, when you wake up, the whole illusory dream vanishes. Though the objects were there, they were not really present. It was just an illusion created by the Divine Mother. So, also, Vedanta says if you apply the same logic to our waking state, at a higher level of consciousness, you will find this world also as a dream. The world also becomes the objects of the world which you think are real. They are transitory and they'll vanish and become as just as they vanish when you wake up. So when you get into the higher state of consciousness, which is Turiya, the state of intense, undivided consciousness or Advaita, there even this waking state, just like the dream world, it vanishes. And these objects which we now take to be real, they don't exist. So Brahman alone is the reality, all else is unreal. Shakti is also like a dream, unreal. Now that is from the standpoint of Vedanta. But for that reason, can we just ignore Shakti? Now that is the question which Sri Ramakrishna is answering. He says, according to Advaita, according to the Vedanta, just as a dream is illusory, even this waking state is illusory, very much illusory. So, you may reason 1,000 times and you will not go beyond the jurisdiction of Shakti. Now he says, though it is true, and you may think 100 times, 1,000 times, he's talking of he is giving a very pragmatic view now. He says, it is true that this waking state also is like a dream, but however much you reason, however much you intellectually understand, however much you listen to Advaita Vedanta talks on Advaita Vedanta, where you are supposed to negate the world, negate all the experiences, say neti, neti, neti every moment of your life. That is what practical Advaita is. When we hear sermons on Advaita, we have to remember one thing. Advaita as an intellectual understanding is totally different than the experience of Advaita. Now, sincere Advaitins cannot take the world to be real. If they take, they have to be like Totapuri. Totapuri, just to create a feeling that this world is unreal, he moved in the open air. He never tried to stay within four walls. Now, it is a very, very, very difficult task to deny this experience of the world for ordinary people, for most of the people, even those who speak gloriously about Advaita Vedanta. So Sri Ramakrishna was aware that these Brahmos who had a philosophy something similar to Advaita Vedanta, though they were not non-dualists in that sense, but he knew that for these people who have wives, who have children, who are leading, who have businesses, they are having, how can they deny? How can they deny that the world is real? So he says that is why you have to accept Shakti or the Divine Mother. You may reason 1,000 times and you will not go beyond the jurisdiction of Shakti. That means, though you may be hearing talks on Advaita Vedanta day and night and say again and again, Sri Ramakrishna, some of our Swamis used to make fun. Say you go to Punjab where they are predominantly Advaita Vedantins in the akhadas, they'll say, Are Jagat to teen kaal mein nahi hai. The world does not exist in all the three states, waking or any state it doesn't. But the moment they feel hungry or moment somebody takes away their roti, they start fighting with each other. So I said, what kind of Vedanta is this? Even Totapuri, when Sri Ramakrishna saw that Totapuri got angry when somebody tried to light his light his tobacco or maybe wanted to light what he was smoking from the fire, the holy fire before which Totapuri was meditating. And the moment that person tried to light his pipe to smoke, he got angry. He said, "What are you doing?" And he tried to beat him. And Sri Ramakrishna observed it from a distance and laughed at Totapuri. He said, "You are the one who say the world does not exist. Then why are you bothered about all these silly things? Why do you get upset? How does anger come to you? If it is Maya, if it is illusory, then this world has to be totally illusory. Even the person who is taking, why do you make a distinction between a holy fire and an unholy fire? Everything should be same to you." When one has Brahmagyana, when Sri Ramakrishna saw that a person who was a Brahmagyani was eating food from the leftover plates which were thrown along with the dogs, he was sitting with the dog and eating that kind of food. So Sri Ramakrishna was very upset. If non-dual knowledge means I have to live like this, I don't want that. I mean, I don't want to be a dry Advaitin. I would rather become a worshipper of Mother. So this is the point Sri Ramakrishna is trying to convince and tell, though the ultimate reality is that the world does not exist, but no matter how much you deny, it will always come back. You cannot get beyond the jurisdiction of Shakti without attaining the state of Samadhi. Only when you attain Samadhi, then you can say, or then you will feel that the world has gone. The world does not exist anymore. Then you don't care. But till then, you have to accept the jurisdiction of Shakti and the importance of Shakti in our life. I am meditating, I am thinking, all this is within the jurisdiction of Shakti. Even when you do sadhana, though you deny the world, constantly you say neti, neti, neti. So Advaita as an experience, if you want to get, then you have to deny. Every moment of your life, you have to deny the existence. You have to deny the existence of your son, deny the attachment you have to your son, daughters, relatives, money. And just as Sri Ramakrishna did taka, mati, mati, taka, it threw away everything. So that kind of renunciation can be very difficult. So it is one thing to understand 1,000 times, Sri Ramakrishna says, even if you reason 1,000 times and listen to these wonderful talks on Advaita, but still, if you cannot perceive that without the help of Shakti, you have to have some kind of sadhana that I am meditating, I am doing, they are all within the jurisdiction of Shakti. That is why Brahman and Shakti are inseparable. Belief in one implies the belief in other, like fire and its burning power. You can't accept fire and say there is no burning power. If there is a burning power, it has to be associated with that fire because the fire burns. So you can't separate Brahman and Shakti just as you can't separate the burning power of the fire and the fire itself. If fire is Brahman, the burning power is Shakti. So they are very closely connected to each other. Fire cannot be thought of apart from its burning power, nor can its burning power be thought of apart from the fire. So, just as Shakti cannot exist without Brahman, Brahman cannot exist without Shakti. You can't think of something burning without having that fire. Fire has to be there for to burn. The sun's rays cannot be conceived apart from the sun, nor the sun can be conceived of apart from its rays. If we see the rays, then there is a sun. And if there is a sun, then there are rays. You cannot separate them. They are intimately connected. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to convince, that if you accept Brahman as the only reality, then you have to accept Shakti as well. Because you are seeing it, you are experiencing it. Theoretically, it is fine that Brahman alone is real, the world is unreal. But do you see the world as unreal? Then why are you a hypocrite? Till you see the world, till you go into Samadhi and really the world vanishes for you, then you have Advaita as an experience, not Advaita as a theory. Now it is just a theory for you, and no amount of reasoning will give you that experience. You have to have that experience and then say the world is unreal. What is milk like? Well, it is something white. If you ask somebody, its whiteness cannot be conceived of apart from the milk, nor can the milk be conceived of apart from its whiteness. Now you see the milk is white. If you see the milk as white, everybody knows that. So can you think of black milk? You can't, because the milk by its very nature is white. So the color or the manifestation of that milk as a substance and milk as with its qualities are inseparably connected to each other. That's what he's saying. Thus, Shakti cannot be thought of apart from Brahman, nor can Brahman be thought of apart from Shakti. Nitya, the absolute, and the Leela, the relative phenomenal world, cannot be thought of apart from each other. So that which is Nitya, the eternal, is also the Leela. Leela, the objective world that we see outside. We see so many objects. The whole objective world, if you see, has no existence apart from the eternal substratum. That is why when we say Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike, in the last verse we say, you are Gunamayi, but you are also without gunas. You are the substratum as well as you are the one who possesses the gunas. You are nirguna, that is without any qualities. But at the same time, you are full of gunas, the three gunas, and that is how the world is created. The primordial divine energy creates Shakti, creates Adya Shakti. The primordial, that is the translation of Adya Shakti. In Shakti also there are two aspects. One is the Shakti which we see, the Prakriti, or the Adya Shakti, the primordial, which cannot be seen, which is one with Brahman. The Adya Shakti creates, first it has to create. Then it preserves. The world exists for some time, then it goes back. It's like the Big Bang, then we have the creation, then it goes back into the black hole. It goes back into the unmanifest. The black hole, perhaps we can get an idea of what this creation, preservation, and destruction. Destruction means it is going back to the original Adya Shakti, the primordial state. That is what people are trying to explain in modern physics, that black holes, where the whole creation is sucked into it and nothing, even gravity, cannot escape. That is why it is known as the black hole, where matter condenses, and suddenly vanishes. We do not know. So the cycle of creation, sustenance, and destruction is a cyclic. It is a cyclic event, which is known as Kali. She is the Kali. Kali is the Brahman, and Brahman is Kali, one and the same substance. She is the primary Adya Shakti, not different from Brahman, and she is the one who creates, preserves, and at the same time destroys. Because destruction also is an aspect of Kali. It cannot be simply creation, because we have come from something and we go back to that. So going back to the original state, the Adya Shakti, that is what Kali is about. That's why it is shown as there's nothing tamasic about Kali, as these Brahmos had understood. So Thakur is clearing their doubts, showing what is the real significance of Kali. She is the primordial power, she is the Adya Shakti, and she brings the objects, the waking world, all the different worlds into creation. She creates them, then she maintains it, and then again absorbs it. And when she absorbs it, that form is the Adya Shakti, the dissolution, the destruction or the dissolution. There's no such thing as destruction. You cannot destroy matter. It can go back to its primordial state. So going back to the primordial state is known as pralaya. Sthiti, Srishti, Sthiti, and Pralaya. So these are the three stages which Adya Shakti plays. She creates Srishti, Sthiti, she maintains the universe, conducts the divine Leela, which is known as Leela, and then she goes back to her primal state, Nitya. From Nitya comes the Leela, and from Leela again back to Nitya. So that is the cycle. When she is inactive, neither creating nor preserving nor destroying, that same Adya Shakti is Brahman. When she performs all these activities, I call her Kali. I call her Shakti. But the being is the same, only the names and forms are different. For example, Jal, water and Pani, reservoir may have 3 or 4 ghats. One ghat Hindus drink water and they call it Jal, Another god Muslims drink water and they call it pani. Another god the English drink water and call it water. These three are the one and the same. Only the names are different. Some call him Allah, some God, some Brahman, some Kali, some call him Rama, Hari, Jesus, and Durga. So here Sri Ramakrishna is not only speaking of harmony of religions or harmony of different sects, but is also speaking that the formless or the one without guna, nirguna, and the guna which has come from the nirguna existence, from the primordial Adya Shakti, they are one and the same. They are at different stages and they appear different, but they are the same. So Keshav now is interested. He says, please tell us in what different ways Kali manifests itself. Now you should remember, though there were so many critics of Ma Kali in the Brahmo Samaj, when their own founder or so-called one of the leaders, if not the founder, talks of ask Sri Ramakrishna about Kali, these people have no other option but to listen to what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. So all the opposition, perhaps if there was some opposition, has gone. That is the power of Sri Ramakrishna. That even a person like Keshav Chandra Sen is willing to hear a contrary view which they don't believe. Because he knew whatever Sri Ramakrishna says is the truth. They were maybe bound by their rules not to accept Kali, but at the same time, they could not resist the wonderful explanation Sri Ramakrishna gave. So Sri Ramakrishna smiles and tells them, she plays in various ways. She herself is Mahakali, the goddess unconditioned, absolute, without form. When you say Kali, the different Kalis, you know, Keshav Chandra Sen loved this concept of Kali secretly. Sri Ramakrishna knew that. And though he openly did not preach, but when Sri Ramakrishna is explaining, is listening with lot of intensity and interest. Now, Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful explanation. This explanation perhaps will not get anywhere else. There are so many explanations of Ma Kali, but when it comes from Sri Ramakrishna's own mouth, it has assumes a totally different proportion. He says, when she herself is Mahakali, the unconditioned absolute without form, she is known as Mahakali. Kali comes as Mahakali, assumes when she is Mahakali, she is unconditioned. She is absolute, one with Brahman. You don't see her. Then Nitya Kali, the everlasting goddess, one who creates and then resides in this universe. She is a Nitya Kali, the everlasting goddess. Smashana Kali, the goddess of the creation ground. Because if if something is created, it has to be destroyed. And the symbol of destruction is Smashana. So Smashana Kali is also another aspect of Kali. Kali who destroys. Then we have Raksha Kali, the goddess that blesses and is ready to preserve. Because to maintain this universe and to protect us, then we need somebody to protect us. So we can also worship her as Raksha Kali, as Nitya Kali, we can Smashana Kali. So there are so many various aspects of Kali which are being worshipped. Then we have Shama Kali, the mother of dark blue complexion, the consort of Shiva, the god of eternity and infinity. So Shiva is supposed to be a representation of Brahman. When we come to the iconography, the image, the interpretation of idols, so Shiva and the deity represented by Shiva, who is also considered to be a destroyer of the universe. Vishnu is supposed to be the preserver. Brahma is supposed to be the creator. In that also, the counterpart of Shiva is Mahakali. So, the Tantra speak of Mahakali and Nitya Kali. When there was no creation, no moon, no sun, no planets, no earth, nothing but deep darkness, then there was only the formless divine mother Mahakali living with Mahakala. Mahakala is Shiva, another name for Shiva. So when Kali is dancing on the chest of Shiva, the symbology says that he is the Mahakala. And she dances on the chest of Mahakala and is that's why known as Mahakali. So when in total darkness, There's a beautiful song, Nibida Adhare Mator Chamake or Uparashi. In that deep darkness, cave of the heart, in the deep cave of the heart, which is symbolized by darkness, shines your resplendent bright form. Chamake or Uparashi. Your form has come out from the formless. So the concept of Kali is so beautiful in our literature, in the tantric literature, that unless we really understand it, that is what fascinated Sister Nivedita. If you read her beautiful book on Kali, the mother, the ideas she got from Swamiji, the ideas she heard from other people after Swamiji passed away, she heard a lot of stories about Kali from various scholars, various Swamis, and also Gaurima and Gopal Lerma from the Indian tradition. So she wrote some beautiful books, and one of them was Kali the Mother. There she gives the wonderful interpretation. So Sri Krishna, and also of course Sri Krishna's gospel. So uh, Shama Kali, now Sri Krishna is explaining these things, you can't get it in scriptures. That's why it is always better to focus on the gospel, which is the mother of all scriptures. What you can't get in by reading Upanishads, what you can't get by reading the Tantras independently, you will get a synthetic explanation by reading the Gospel. It is so important because it encompasses the entire gamut of religious experiences of India, whether it is Vedanta, whether it is Tantras, whether it is Bhakti Shastras, Vaishnavism, or name it and you will find it in the Gospel. Now you see how Sri Krishna is explaining. Not even a great scholar, an academic scholar can explain these things. You see, if you just look at the YouTube and just type Kali, you'll get so many confusing versions. We do not know because none of them who speak on all these things have had any personal experience. And they give fantastic experiences and people believe in them. So it's always better to read books or the essential scriptures which give you the truth, because that is based on experience, based on his own vision of Kali, which was confirmed, and not only confirmed but recorded in this wonderful gospel. So he says, now Shama Kali, if you read any number of tantras or any number of Upanishads or hear any number of lectures, you won't get the gist. We have to focus on the gist. Our time is short. First of all, we don't have time even to read the gospel. And apart from that, if we go on browsing and reading so many things which are not relevant to our life, it will be a total waste. I was reading the Raj Yoga today, and Swami Vivekananda mentions it very clearly that the time is short and the books are numerous, but read only books which were written by men of intense realization. Then you will be safe. We don't have to read many things or listen to many things to get an idea of spirituality. We have a very, very clear idea from the gospel. What is explained in thousands of Upanishads and hundreds of lectures on Vedanta, what is explained in hundreds of lectures on yoga, tantra, and all the other sects and other religions, you can get as in a gist. The essential have been recorded so beautifully in this gospel. So you can get the essence. When you have the essence, why do you bother about the other things? So he says Shama Kali has a very tender heart. She is the bestower of fearlessness. She is worshipped in all the households. Shama Kali. Now, whether people understand this and worship her, or whether they worship with different motives, that is a different thing. But Sri Krishna is saying this is the attitude with which you worship Shama Kali. She is dark, but she has a tender heart. Now, these are the meditations without which our Kali Puja becomes useless. It is just converted into a simple ritual where there is some social gathering, eating, drinking, and we finish and we spend our time and we don't know whom we have worshipped, why we have worshipped, and what we have gained after that. So here, Sri Krishna is saying Shama Kali is has a very tender heart. Now, this aspect, do we think when we worship Mother Kali that she has a tender heart? Unless we do it, we do not get the benefit of worshipping Kali, because this is based on experience. She is worshipped in all the households in times of epidemics, famine, earthquakes, drought, and floods, including this COVID. You should worship Raksha Kali. That's the other aspect. So Kali appears in so many forms. Whenever there is a need to worship her, to give fearlessness, and when you expect a tender heart, when there is fear, with a tender heart she will come and bestow fearlessness, then you worship her as Shama Kali. And when there are epidemics and all those things, the other aspect of Kali which comes to your rescue is the Raksha Kali. Smashan Kali is the form of destruction. She lives in the midst of dead bodies, jackals, dakinis, yoginis in the cremation ground. Now he's giving you a description of what Smashan Kali is like and why should she be worshipped. She streams of blood pour from her mouth. She wears the garland of skulls around her head, around her neck, and at her waist she wears a girdle of human hands. At the time of dissolution of the world, total dissolution, Mahapralaya, the mother preserves all the seeds of creation, just as the mistress of the house has a hodgepodge pot in which she keeps all kinds of things. Keshab and others laugh. Now, he is trying to explain why does mother destroy? Because that is the very nature of creation. It is transient. It cannot be eternal. If the world were eternal, Sri Ram Krishna told this. I could have converted the whole Kamarpukur with gold. I know that gold will not be eternal. It will go away. It will vanish. So the Smashan Kali, or the with this streams of blood, she shows these are all symbolic of the idea of destruction. That we think the world is a very pleasurable place, but Smashan Kali comes to remind that don't be fooled by these toys of the world. They will be there. They won't be eternally with you. And I will come in the form of Smashan Kali, and the whole world will vanish like this. That is the girdle of human hands, the hands with which you created this beautiful, so many things. It will be taken away at the time of death, and the total dissolution, Mahapralaya, will take place. But at the same time, she preserves. How come our samskaras, the gross body gets destroyed, as I told you. The four pranas also are destroyed because we don't have the prana, apana, samana, vyana. Because we don't have a nervous system, we don't have vyana. We don't have a stomach, so we don't need samana vayu. We discussed about that in our Raj Yoga. We discussed in great detail the five pranas, of which when the body is destroyed, all the pranas, prana which results in breathing and heartbeat, is the prana, one of the pancha pranas. That is destroyed because we don't have a heart, we don't have a lung when the body is cremated. So why do we need that? So that prana merges back into the primal prana. Then we samana, because we are not eating anything. We don't have a stomach. So the samana vayu also vanishes along with the annamaya kosha, the body. The vyana vayu, we don't have a nervous system. The spine is gone, the nervous system has gone. So we don't need the vyana vayu to run with the jiva. The jiva doesn't possess that. And apana, the one which is responsible for removing the waste matter from our body, even that is not necessary because there is no body at all. Then what is the vayu which carries the samskaras forward? These are the seeds which Thakur is speaking of here. The seeds of creation, the seeds which will give rise to another birth, where all the other four pranas will come back to you. You will get a heart, you will get a lung, you will get a stomach, and all the pranas will slowly be strengthened. But the Udana Vayu, the Vayu which they say goes out of the Sahasrara, that becomes a receptacle. It becomes a receptacle which carries the samskaras. These are the samskaras are the bijas. They are in seed form. So here when she says a hodgepodge pot in which she keeps all kinds of things. So when she destroys the physical body with the four pranas, she preserves it. The hodgepodge pot in which she keeps all kinds of things. These are the samskaras of the seeds of creation, which we need if we are born again. So what is true at the individual level is true at the cosmic level also. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna is. See the wonderful philosophy. Here is combining yoga, tantra, Vedanta. You don't have to read these different texts. Just read the gospel and that's fine. I mean, you will get the effect of reading all the scriptures. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is smiling. Yes, my friend, the mistress of the house does have such a pot in her possession. In it, she keeps sea foam in a solid state, small packets containing seeds of cucumber, pumpkin, gourd, and so on. Sri Ramakrishna is just giving an example from a typical rural Bengal house where these seeds, when the season is gone, the old women they preserve these seeds so that they can plant it in season and again they can get the crop of the pumpkin and so many other things. All types of seeds are kept carefully. She brings them out when needed. In the same way, the Divine Mother keeps all the seeds at the time of creation of dissolution. So when she comes as Mahakali and destroys, or Smashana Kali, she takes care and preserves the samskaras in the Udanavayu or the samskaras and sees to it that there is creation, there is scope for future creation. When the individual is reborn with new samskaras, with all the new things, the new body, the new pranas, and then he continues his soul's journey. So the cyclic existence is going on. And then he says, after the creation, the primordial divine energy lives very much in the world. She lives because she has given birth to the world. She lives within it. And Thakur gives a wonderful example. How can it be possible that the mother gives birth to the child and lives in the child? So he gives the example of the Urna Nabhi. The Vedas talk of the Urna Nabhi. Just like the Urna Nabhi means the spider and its web. So the spider creates the web out of itself. It is like mother giving rise to creation. She creates, but she lives in that web. The spider creates the web, but does not leave the web. Though it has come out of itself and lives in that same web, the Lord is both the container and the content of the world. He is the container because he has this web inside, just as the spider has the contents of the web inside. It projects it outside, creates the web, and lives in the web itself. So that is how creation is explained: creation, sustenance, and destruction. So the Lord is both the container and the content of the world. That is, it is the substance from which the web is made and is also the web. The web, when it is formed, that is also part of creation. Kali is Brahman with form and without form. Is Kali dark? Now, this song, there are many songs. Whether my mother is dark, why is she black? There are so many wonderful songs of Ma Kali written by these poets, composed by these poets. So that was the question that the poets asked themselves. Poets asked Mother. They wanted to see the vision of Mother. They wanted to know what exactly do you mean? Is my mother really black? Is she dark? Now Sri Ramakrishna explains. Is Kali dark? She seems to be of dark complexion because she is far off. When you know her, she does not appear dark. Now, this is based on vision. You can't get it in any scripture. She is dark because of the distance. But as you come near, the darkness vanishes and you see Mother as she is. And then Sri Ramakrishna immediately gives a beautiful simile or an example which explains how it is possible. How do we see a darkness when it is far off and the darkness vanishes when the object comes near? He says the sky appears to be blue because of the distance. When you see close up, it has no color. You can't see the space in front of you has no color. But if you see the vast sky, which is limitless, which is very far, you get the feeling that it is blue. But the nearer you go, you don't get that blue color. Sea water appears blue from a distance. But if you go near, it is colorless. It's just like any other water. But from a distance, you see the reflection of the sky, you see the infinite blueness reflected in it. So, Ma Kali is black or blue or deep black from a distance. But when you come close to her, that dark color vanishes and you are no more afraid of, or maybe you don't see her in that form. So, saying this, when you go near it and take some in the palm of your hand, it has no color. That is the water. The water looks blue, but when you go near, so similarly, when you worship Ma Kali, you will find that the color vanishes, her color vanishes, and you see as a spirit. That's what Sri Ramakrishna, as spirit of consciousness, the pure consciousness. If you see Sri Ramakrishna's first vision, he worshipped Kali naturally. When you see the mother's figure image in Dakshineshwar is black. But when he really wanted her vision, when he got the vision, what did he see? He didn't see the black mother. He didn't see coming in a black form. He saw pure light of consciousness. He saw the Adya Shakti, the pure consciousness, a sea of consciousness, the sword with which he wanted to kill himself. He told mother that if you don't show yourself, then I'll kill myself. At that time, mother interferes and she shows a real form. What was the form? If you read the description in the Leela Prasang or the Great Master, there is a sea of consciousness, bright light, where the darkness vanishes and he sees mother as light. So it is one thing when you don't understand mother. When she is at a distance, she appears dark, but when you come closer, that's what Sri Ramakrishna is explaining. And then he sings this song. Maybe next time uh, we can have this song if some of you can sing. There is only one line here. I don't know which song is this. I'll have to consult the Bengali gospel. Saying this, drunk with the wine of divine love, Sri Ramakrishna begins to sing a song. Unfortunately, only one line is given here, and M concludes with this particular chapter or this particular portion. Infinite is the garment that she wears. She illumines the lotus of the heart. Now, that is a song which we'll have to do some research. Some of you can just consult the Bengali and see. Though only one line is there, there is a book published by the Institute of Culture where the entire song is given. So that is how this wonderful song, Sri Ramakrishna begins to sing a song. And then we come to the next chapter, which begins by a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. But since we have just uh, running short of time, we'll just have a few questions and we'll begin with chapter 5 next time. The conversation is still continuing, Keshav is still there. And then how mother creates bondage and then liberates us. She not only creates and destroys the universe, but she also creates bondage for human beings. And we are bound to the world. At the same time, she is the one who gives us liberation and frees us from this bondage. So then there's a beautiful song where Ram Prasad's song is being sung. We will discuss that next time. And if in the meantime, I just request you, from you, to find which song is the song which Sri Ramakrishna sang, and there's only one line. Infinite is the garment that she wears. She illumines the lotus of the heart. So today I conclude here this gospel satsang. Now I would request if there are some questions. Maybe we have time for a few questions. I'm not in a hurry, so